The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in March, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing that probably cost more per piece than I spent on groceries in a week. Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Richardson request the honor of your presence. I had to read it twice before I realized my son was getting married, and I was being informed, not consulted. No phone call, no visit, just an invitation in the mail like I was a distant relative they felt obligated to include. I set it on my kitchen counter next to the stack of past due notices and stared at it for a long time. Ryan was 28 now, successful in his tech job, living in a downtown loft that cost more in monthly rent than I made in 6 months at the insurance office. He'd been with Barbara for 3 years, and I'd met her exactly twice, both times brief. Awkward encounters where she looked at my small apartment and my discount store clothes with the kind of polite disgust wealthy people perfect. The wedding was set for June 15th, a Saturday at the country club where Barbara's family held membership and where I was certain I would stick out like a grass stain on white linen. I called Ryan that evening. "Oh hey, Mom." His voice had that distracted quality it always carried when he talked to me, like he was simultaneously checking emails or scrolling through his phone. "You got the invitation?" "I did." "Congratulations, honey. Barbara seems lovely." A pause. "Yeah, she is. Listen, about the wedding. I'm so happy for you both. When would be a good time to help with planning? I know these things can be expensive, and I've been saving." "Mom, stop." His voice sharpened. "We don't need help. Barbara's parents are handling everything. It's all taken care of." "I'm not talking about money, Ryan. I'm talking about being involved. Mother-son dance, helping choose flowers, tasting cake. We've already done all that. Look, just show up on the day, okay? Wear something nice, but not too, conservative. Barbara's family is pretty traditional. Something nice, but not too." I understood perfectly, of course. I said, my voice steady despite the familiar ache spreading through my chest. I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone. "It's not about embarrassing. Never mind. I have to go. Barbara's making dinner." The line went dead, and I sat in my silent apartment staring at the invitation. In the corner, in small print, it said, "Black tie optional." I had never owned anything that could pass for black tie. My one decent dress was navy blue and 5 years old, purchased for Ryan's college graduation. Over the next 3 months, I saved every penny I could. I skipped meals, walked to work instead of taking the bus, canceled my cable subscription. By May, I had enough to buy a dress that wouldn't humiliate my son on his wedding day, deep emerald green, simple but elegant, from a department store that was several steps up from my usual thrift shop finds. I even splurged on new shoes and had my graying hair professionally styled for the first time in years. I wanted to look like I belonged, like I was worthy of being Ryan's. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked polished, dignified. For a moment, I let myself imagine Ryan's face when he saw me, maybe a flicker of pride, a moment where he introduced me to his new in-laws without that subtle wince I'd grown accustomed to. The country club sat on perfectly manicured grounds that rolled toward a small lake. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, BMWs, Mercedes, a few Teslas. My 15-year-old Honda Civic, freshly washed but still obviously ancient, looked like it had wandered into the wrong zip code. Inside, the lobby gleamed with marble and crystal. Guests mingled in clusters, their laughter echoing off high ceilings. The women wore designer dresses and jewelry that caught the light with every movement. The men had the relaxed confidence that comes with never having to check your bank balance before making a purchase. I spotted Ryan near the main staircase, resplendent in his black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. He was laughing at something Barbara's father was saying, his head thrown back in genuine amusement. Barbara stood beside him in a wedding dress that probably cost more than my annual salary, radiant and perfect. They looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. I made my way over, my new shoes clicking against the marble floor. As I approached, Ryan's gaze found mine, and for just a moment, his smile faltered, not with recognition or warmth, but with something that looked disturbingly like resignation. "Mom," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You made it." "You look so handsome," I said, reaching up to straighten his bow tie, a gesture I'd done 1,000 times when he was younger. But now he stepped back slightly, just enough to break the contact. "Thanks. You look nice." The pause before nice lasted just long enough to sting. Barbara's father, a distinguished man with silver hair and a golf tan, extended his hand. "You must be Ryan's mother." "Tom Whitmore," I replied, shaking his hand. "Catherine Morris. Congratulations on gaining such a wonderful son-in-law." Indeed, his smile was polite but distant. "Ryan tells us you work in insurance." "I do, data entry mostly." I had learned not to oversell my modest position, but today I'm just the proud mother of the groom. Tom nodded and immediately turned his attention back to Ryan, launching into a story about the golf course at his vacation home in Hilton Head. I stood there for another moment, invisible again, before quietly moving away. The ceremony was beautiful. Ryan's eyes never left Barbara as she walked down the aisle, and when they exchanged vows, there was a love in his voice that I remembered from when he was small and would tell me about his day at school. But those moments felt like they belonged to someone else's son, someone else's life. I sat in the third row behind Barbara's extended family and Ryan's college friends. No one saved me a seat in the front row. No one seemed to notice I was there at all. After the ceremony, as guests moved toward the reception hall, I lingered in the chapel, straightening my dress and trying to prepare myself for what came next. The reception would be harder, more time to feel out of place, more opportunities for small humiliations. But I was Ryan's mother. This was his wedding day. I would endure whatever came next because that's what mothers do. I had no idea that in a few hours, I would discover there were limits to what even a mother's love could endure. The reception hall was a vision of understated elegance, white linens, crystal stemware, and centerpieces that looked like they'd been arranged by florists who charged more per hour than I made in a day. Round tables for 8 dotted the room, each one a careful ecosystem of social hierarchy. I found my name card at table 7, tucked in the back corner near the kitchen doors. The other seats were occupied by what appeared to be Barbara's distant relatives, an elderly aunt with a hearing aid, a couple who looked uncomfortable in their formal wear, and several empty chairs that suggested even the slightest guests hadn't all bothered to show up. At table 1, directly in front of the head table where Ryan and Barbara would sit, were the Whiters and their closest family friends. Table 2 held Ryan's college buddies and their wives, while Table 3 had Barbara's sorority sisters. I watched the careful choreography of wealth and connection, understanding exactly where I ranked in my son's new world. "Excuse me, are you Ryan's mother?" The voice belonged to a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. "I'm Margaret, Barbara's great aunt." I was hoping to sit with someone who knows the groom. "Catherine," I replied, grateful for any friendly face. "Please join me." As we settled in, Margaret leaned closer. "Between you and me, I feel a bit out of place here. All this." She gestured at the opulence around us. "It's beautiful, but it's not exactly my cup of tea." "It's Ryan's special day," I said automatically. "That's what matters." The cocktail hour stretched on, and I watched my son work the room like a politician. He moved from table to table, shaking hands, sharing laughs, playing the perfect groom. But as the minutes ticked by, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. He visited every table except mine. I told myself he was saving the best for last. I told myself he was busy. I told myself anything that would keep the growing hollow feeling in my stomach from expanding. When dinner was finally served, the wait staff moved with practiced efficiency, delivering plates to the head table first, then working their way through the hierarchy. Tables 1 through 6 received their meals, beautifully plated salmon with asparagus and roasted potatoes, the food still steaming by the time they reached our table. The kitchen was clearly running behind. Margaret received her plate, lukewarm but presentable. The elderly aunt got hers next, then the uncomfortable couple, and then they ran out. "I'm so sorry," the server said, looking genuinely embarrassed. There was a miscommunication in the kitchen. "Your meals will be out in just a few minutes." 20 minutes passed, then 30. Around us, the other guests had finished eating and moved on to toasts and speeches. I sat with my empty place setting, my stomach growling quietly, watching my son laugh at his new father-in-law's jokes. Finally, a different server appeared with a plate. The salmon was cold, the asparagus limp, the potatoes congealed with a skin of cooling grease. It looked like the kind of meal you'd find under a heat lamp at a cheap buffet. "Kitchen scraps," Margaret whispered sympathetically. "This is inexcusable." But I smiled and picked up my fork. "It's fine," I said. "I'm just happy to be here." The truth was, I was used to leftovers, used to being last, used to making do with whatever remained after everyone else had taken their share. This was just another variation on a familiar theme. I was halfway through my cold salmon when I heard it, Ryan's voice carrying across the room as he stood to give his thank you speech. But before he addressed the crowd, he was talking to Barbara, his voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Did you see? They finally brought my mom her food." He gestured toward my table with a grin that looked cruel in the soft lighting. "She's used to eating what life leaves behind, so she won't mind." Barbara laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Several people at the head table joined in, following her lead. The sound rippled outward as Ryan's college friends picked up on the joke, their wives covering their mouths to hide their giggles. I set down my fork carefully, my hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Margaret looked horrified. "Did he just?" "Fine," I said again, but the words felt like ash in my mouth. Ryan continued his speech, thanking the Whites for welcoming him into their family, thanking his friends for their support, thanking Barbara for making him the luckiest man alive. He thanked the caterers, the musicians, even the florists. He never mentioned me. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. Glasses clinked, people wiped tears from their eyes, and Ryan bent to kiss his bride as if he'd just delivered the most heartfelt speech ever given. I sat in my corner, surrounded by cold food and the echoing memory of my son's laughter at my expense, and felt something inside me break cleanly in two, not shatter. That would have been Messier, more dramatic. This was precise, surgical, the final severance of whatever connection I'd been desperately trying to maintain. The dancing began after dinner. Ryan and Barbara glided across the floor for their first dance, looking like something out of a fairy tale. Then came the parent dances, Tom Whitmore spinning Barbara with practiced grace, Barbara's mother swaying sentimentally with Ryan. I waited for Ryan to find me for our dance. I had imagined this moment for months, had even practiced a few steps in my living room while old music played from my phone. As the evening wore on and other family members joined the dancing, it became clear that no invitation was coming. Ryan was too busy, too important, too caught up in his new life to remember the woman who had raised him alone after his father left when he was 7. The woman who had worked double shifts to pay for his baseball equipment, who had helped him with algebra homework at the kitchen table every night, who had driven him to college in her falling-apart car and cried in the parking lot after saying goodbye. Margaret touched my arm gently. "Are you all right, dear?" I looked around the room at the laughter and celebration, at my son spinning on the dance floor with his beautiful wife, at the life he had built that had no place for me in it. For the first time all evening, I felt completely clear about what was happening. "I'm perfect," I said and meant it. I stood up, smoothing my emerald dress one last time. I walked to the coat check, retrieved my purse, and headed for the exit. No one noticed me leaving, not Ryan, not Barbara, not any of the guests who had spent the evening pretending I didn't exist. But as I reached the lobby, I heard footsteps behind me. "Mrs. Morris?" It was Margaret, slightly out of breath. "Are you leaving?" "I am." Without saying goodbye, I turned to look back through the doorway at the reception, still in full swing. Ryan was at the bar now, surrounded by his friends, his tie loosened and his face flushed with champagne and happiness. He looked young and carefree and completely unburdened by thoughts of his mother. "He won't notice," I said simply. Margaret's face crumpled with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. The way he spoke about you, that wasn't right." No, I agreed. It wasn't. But as I walked to my car under the soft glow of the country club's landscape lighting, I wasn't thinking about apologies or sympathy. I was thinking about the email I would write when I got home, the one that would arrive in Ryan's inbox tomorrow morning while he was still recovering from his wedding hangover, the one that would change everything. I drove home in complete silence, no radio, no thoughts, just the steady rhythm of my heartbeat and the white lines disappearing under my headlights. The woman who had entered that country club 6 hours ago, hopeful and nervous, still believing in the possibility of reconciliation, was gone. In her place sat someone I was just beginning to meet. My apartment felt different when I walked in, smaller, but also cleaner somehow, stripped of illusions. I hung my emerald dress in the closet next to my work clothes and changed into jeans and a t-shirt. Then I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and began to compose the most important email of my life. I didn't write it in anger. Anger would have been messy, emotional, easy to dismiss. Instead, I wrote it with the precision of someone who had finally stopped pretending that love could exist without respect. "Ryan, I'm writing this while your wedding day is still fresh in my memory, though I suspect the details that matter to me are different from the ones you'll remember. I want to thank you for the clarity you provided tonight. Your comment about me being used to eating what life leaves behind was illuminating, not because it was cruel, though it was, but because it was honest. For the first time in years, you told me exactly what you think of me. You're right. I have spent most of my adult life accepting leftover time after you'd given your best hours to friends and girlfriends, leftover attention after everyone more important had been tended to, and leftover consideration after everyone else's needs had been met. I accepted this because I believed that's what love looked like, that being your mother meant being grateful for whatever scraps of affection you chose to throw my way. But tonight, watching you laugh while I sat with my cold dinner, I realized something important. I taught you to treat me like leftovers. Every time I accepted less than basic human decency, I was showing you that I believed I deserved less than basic human decency. I won't be making that mistake anymore. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing from all financial support I have been providing. This includes the $500 monthly deposits I've been making to your savings account since you graduated college. You thought those came from your trust fund, but there is no trust fund. It was me working overtime and skipping meals so you could build your nest egg. I will also be discontinuing the life insurance policy that names you as the beneficiary, the policy I've maintained for 12 years, paying premiums that often meant I had to choose between groceries and gas. I am canceling the credit card I opened for your emergencies, the one you've used 17 times in the past 2 years for everything from car repairs to vacation deposits, always with promises to pay me back that somehow never materialized. Most importantly, I am selling the house. Yes, Ryan, I own the house where you grew up, the house you assume will someday be yours. I never told you this because I wanted you to succeed on your own merits, not because you were waiting for an inheritance. The house is worth approximately $340,000 in today's market. I plan to sell it within the next 6 months. I will be using that money to travel, to live, to finally experience some of the things I postponed while I was busy being invisible in your life. You asked me once why I never remarried after your father left. The truth is, I was so busy being your mother that I forgot to be anything else. I poured everything I had into raising you, believing that someday you would see all the sacrifices as acts of love rather than signs of weakness. I was wrong about many things, but I was especially wrong about this. I thought that if I loved you enough, you would eventually love me back, not as the woman who cleaned your messes and funded your mistakes, but as a person worthy of basic respect. Tonight, you made it clear that will never happen. I'm not angry, Ryan. Anger implies that I expected better. Instead, I'm grateful you freed me from the exhausting work of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Don't mistake this for a threat or an attempt at manipulation. I'm not looking for an apology or trying to punish you into better behavior. I'm simply informing you that the bank of mom is permanently closed. I hope your marriage brings you happiness. I hope Barbara gives you everything you need, and I hope that someday when you have children of your own, you'll understand the difference between loving someone and respecting them. You will always be my son, but I will no longer be your safety net. Catherine, I read the email 3 times before sending it. Each word was measured, deliberate. True, there was no pleading, no room for negotiation, no hidden message begging him to prove me wrong. At 3:47 a.m., I click send. Then I poured myself a glass of wine from the expensive bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never came and began planning my new life. By Sunday afternoon, I had contacted a realtor. By Monday, I had found a financial advisor. By Tuesday, I had started researching extended stay apartments in cities I'd never visited. By Wednesday, I had scheduled vacation days for the first time in 3 years. Ryan's response came Thursday morning, exactly as I had predicted it would. Mom, what the hell is this email? Are you having some kind of breakdown? I think you misunderstood what happened at the wedding. It was just a joke. Everyone was laughing, not just at you. You're being way too sensitive about this. Can we talk like adults? I know you're upset, but selling the house is insane. That's my inheritance you're talking about. Dad would roll over in his grave if he knew you were threatening to give away my future like this. Barbara thinks you might be having some kind of midlife crisis. She knows a therapist who specializes in women your age who are struggling with empty nest syndrome. I can set up an appointment if you want. Let's just calm down and talk this through. I'll come over Sunday and we can figure this out. Ryan, I deleted the email without responding. Saturday brought another message. This one's shorter and more demanding. Mom, I've been trying to call you for 2 days. Pick up your phone. We need to discuss this house situation before you do something stupid. I talked to a lawyer, and you can't just cut me out of my inheritance like this. Call me back. I had changed my phone number on Friday. Sunday's email was different in tone. Catherine, I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding. I was drunk and I wasn't thinking. You know I love you and I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but this whole thing is getting out of hand. Barbara's parents are asking questions about why my mother is acting crazy, and it's embarrassing for both of us. Look, I'll pay you back for whatever money you think I owe you. We can work out a payment plan, but you can't sell the house. I have friends who are interested in buying it from you at a fair price if you really need the money right now. Let's just meet and talk this through face to face. I'll take you to dinner somewhere nice, and we can sort all this out. I forwarded this email to my realtor with a note. Please expedite the listing process. The house went on the market Tuesday morning. It had 3 showings by Thursday and 2 offers by the weekend. I accepted the higher offer, $15,000 over asking price, cash deal, 30-day closing. Ryan's final email arrived that Sunday. You win. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but congratulations. You've managed to destroy our relationship and humiliate me in front of my new family. I hope whatever point you think you're making is worth losing your son over. Don't contact me again. I'm done trying to fix whatever is broken in you. I printed this email and put it in a folder labeled evidence. Not for any legal purpose, but as a reminder of who my son really was when he thought I might stop funding his lifestyle. The closing on the house was scheduled for July 20th. I had already put deposits down on a furnished apartment in Savannah and booked a month-long stay in a bed and breakfast in Vermont for the fall. For the first time in 30 years, I was making plans that had nothing to do with Ryan's needs, Ryan's schedule, or Ryan's approval. The woman who had raised him was gone. In her place was someone who was finally ready to live for herself. The house sold on a Tuesday. I signed the papers in a conference room that smelled like leather and expensive cologne, surrounded by strangers who treated this transaction like any other business deal, which I suppose it was. The check was substantial enough to make the banker raise her eyebrows slightly as she processed the deposit, $355,000 after fees and commissions. More money than I had ever held at one time, more money than Ryan had ever imagined I possessed. I drove past the house one last time after the closing. The new owners had already moved in, a young couple with a toddler who was riding a plastic tricycle in the driveway where Ryan used to practice basketball shots. They looked happy, oblivious to the decades of sacrifice and disappointment that had played out within those walls. I felt nothing looking at it. Nostalgia? No. Regret? It was just a building now, holding someone else's dreams. My phone, the new number Ryan didn't have, had remained blissfully silent for 3 weeks. But that evening, as I was packing the last of my belongings for the move to Savannah, someone knocked on my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Barbara standing in the hallway, looking perfectly composed in her designer clothes and subtle makeup. She was alone. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Catherine, her voice was carefully modulated, the tone she probably used with difficult clients at whatever PR firm she worked for. May I come in? I think we need to talk. I don't think we do. Please, this affects all of us. She gestured vaguely at the space between us. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I stepped aside and let her enter. More out of curiosity than courtesy, she took in my half-packed boxes and bare walls with the same polite assessment she'd used when evaluating my dress at the wedding. Coffee I offered, though I hoped she'd decline. That would be lovely. I made 2 cups from the instant coffee that was all I had left, serving them in mismatched mugs. Barbara accepted hers with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I want you to know that I had no idea Ryan was financially dependent on you to such an extent. She sipped her coffee delicately. He never mentioned the monthly deposits or the credit card arrangement. I'm sure he didn't. When I married him, I assumed his savings account represented his own financial discipline. If I had known... She trailed off, letting me fill in the blanks about what a responsible woman like her would have done. Would it have mattered? Barbara's composure flickered slightly. Of course it would have mattered. I don't believe in adults relying on their parents indefinitely, but now that we know about these arrangements, we can work something out. Ryan's salary is quite good, and with my income, we can certainly manage a reasonable repayment plan. There's nothing to repay. I was giving gifts to my son, gifts that I'm no longer in a position to give. Catherine, Barbara leaned forward, her voice taking on a more urgent tone. I need you to understand something. Ryan's reputation at his company is suffering. When he couldn't make his car payment last month because of this misunderstanding, he had to borrow money from his boss. That's not the kind of thing that looks good when promotion time comes around. I waited for her to continue, my face neutral. The credit card situation has been particularly problematic. He had several automatic payments set up. His gym membership, his professional development courses, even our honeymoon was partially charged to that card. When those payments started bouncing, it created complications. I can imagine. We had to move out of our loft. The rent was... She gestured helplessly. We're staying with my parents temporarily while we figure out our housing situation. This was new information. Ryan and Barbara, the golden couple, living in his in-laws' guest room because the Bank of Mom had closed permanently. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? For the first time, Barbara's mask slipped completely. Because honestly, Catherine, I don't think you are. I think you're enjoying this. I considered her words carefully. Was I enjoying it? Ryan's financial scrambling, his damaged reputation, his wounded pride? I'm not enjoying his difficulties, I said finally, but I'm not responsible for them either. Ryan is 38 years old. If he can't manage his finances without his mother's secret subsidies, that's a problem he created. He's 28, Barbara corrected sharply. No, Barbara, he's 28 in years lived, but he's never had to be an adult because I kept solving his problems before he even knew he had them. I did him no favors by making his life so easy. He said he was your son. He sounded. She paused, searching for the right word. Desperate. I stared at the phone message for a long time. Ryan had somehow tracked me down, found the bookstore, and convinced Rita to take a message. The fact that he'd gone to such lengths told me everything I needed to know about his current state of desperation. Did he say what he wanted? I asked Rita. Just that it was urgent and he needed to speak with you. He left a number. She studied my face carefully. You don't look happy about hearing from him. I'm not. Family's complicated, she said with the wisdom of someone who'd lived long enough to understand that blood doesn't automatically create bonds worth maintaining. I folded the message and put it in my pocket. 3 hours later, as I was shelving returns in the poetry section, I threw it away. But Ryan wasn't the type to give up easily when he needed something. 2 days later, he appeared at the bookstore in person. I was helping a customer find a biography when I looked up and saw him standing near the front door, scanning the store. He looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, his clothes wrinkled, his usual confident posture replaced by something that resembled panic. I finished with my customer and walked over to him, my expression neutral. Ryan. Mom. His voice cracked slightly on the word. Thank God. I've been trying to find you for weeks. I heard. What do you want? He glanced around the store, taking in my name tag, my sensible shoes, the life I'd built without him. Can we talk somewhere private? We can talk here. Please, this is important. There's a coffee shop next door. I'm working. Then after work, I'll wait. I looked at this man who had once been my little boy, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and tell me I was the best mom in the world. That child was gone, replaced by someone who only remembered I existed when he needed something. I get off at 6 o'clock. The coffee shop closes at 7 o'clock. You have 1 hour. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. I'll be waiting. At 6:01, I found him at a corner table, 2 cups already ordered. He'd gotten me a latte with extra foam, the way I used to drink them when he was in high school and we'd occasionally go to the mall together. The gesture was calculated to remind me of better times. I sat down without touching the coffee. You look good, he said, rested. What do you want, Ryan? He took a breath, composing himself. When he spoke, his voice had the rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this conversation multiple times. I want to apologize for everything. The wedding, the way I spoke to you, the way I took you for granted all these years. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I waited for more. I know I hurt you, and I know saying sorry doesn't fix everything that's happened, but I'm hoping we can start over, build a better relationship going forward. Are you? Yes. I've learned a lot about myself over the past few months, about what really matters, and what matters is family. Interesting timing for this revelation. I composed expression flickered. What do you mean? I mean, it's curious that you discovered the importance of family right around the time your financial situation became difficult. That's not. This isn't about money. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Isn't it? Because Barbara paid me a visit a few months ago. She was quite informative about your current circumstances. Ryan's face flushed. Barbara had no right to involve you in our problems. So you admit you have problems? Everyone has problems, Mom. That's not. Look, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't about the money. Yes, things have been tight since you cut us off, but we're managing. I got a promotion at work. Barbara's taking on more clients. We're fine. Then why are you here? The question hung in the air between us. Ryan stared into his coffee cup, his composure finally beginning to crack. Because I miss you, he said quietly. Because I realize what I lost. What did you lose, Ryan? My mother, my family, the person who always believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. The person who always rescued you. You mean that's not fair? Isn't it? Because I've been thinking about our relationship over the past few months, and I've realized something interesting. You never called me just to talk. You never visited unless you needed something. You never included me in your life unless it benefited you somehow. So, when you say you miss me, what exactly do you miss? Ryan's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee. I miss having a mother who loved me. I did love you. I loved you so much that I forgot to require you to love me back. I do love you. No, Ryan, you love what I provided. The safety net, the financial support, the unconditional acceptance of your choices, no matter how they affected me. You loved having a mother who asked for nothing and gave everything. That's not true. I opened my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photo gallery. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 4 months? He shook his head. I went to Charleston and took a cooking class. I learned to make paella from scratch. I visited Asheville and hiked parts of the Blue Ridge Parkway. I spent 2 weeks in Vermont watching the leaves change colors. I've read 37 books, learned to play chess, and started taking Spanish lessons online. I showed him photos, me laughing with my cooking class, standing on mountain overlooks, reading in a hammock strung between 2 oak trees. I've been living, Ryan. For the first time in 30 years, I've been living for myself instead of waiting for you to need me. But you could still do those things. We could even do some of them together. Could we? When was the last time you expressed interest in doing anything with me that wasn't connected to a favor you needed? Silence. I'll wait. I said more silence. The truth is, Ryan, you never saw me as a person. I was a function, the mom function. And when that function became inconvenient or embarrassing, you made jokes about it at your wedding reception. I was drunk. I didn't mean you meant every word. Drunk people don't lie, Ryan. They just stop editing their thoughts before they speak them. He was crying now, tears sliding down his cheeks as the full weight of what he'd lost began to settle on him. But I felt nothing, no urge to comfort him, no maternal instinct to make it better. What can I do? He whispered. Tell me what I can do to fix this. Nothing. There has to be something. Some way to earn your forgiveness. I'm not angry enough to need to forgive you, Ryan. Forgiveness implies that I'm holding on to hurt, waiting for you to heal it. But I'm not hurt anymore. I'm free. I don't understand. I know you don't. That's exactly the problem. I stood up, leaving my untouched latte on the table. Ryan looked up at me with the expression of someone watching his entire world collapse. Wait. Please don't leave like this. I'm not leaving, Ryan. I left months ago. You just finally noticed. I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I hope you learn to be happy with the life you chose. But you'll have to learn it without me. Outside, the Savannah evening was soft and warm. I walked slowly back to my apartment, past the squares filled with Spanish moss and the sound of jazz drifting from restaurant patios. Somewhere behind me, Ryan was probably still sitting at that table, trying to process the fact that his safety net was never coming back. Tomorrow, I would start planning my next adventure. Maybe Italy. Maybe Colorado. Maybe somewhere I'd never imagined going when I was too busy being someone's mother to be myself. The woman who had spent 30 years accepting leftovers was gone forever. In her place was someone who had finally learned that she deserved a seat at the table, or better yet, a table of her own.